So freezing eggs, that was, well, embryos, that was, you know, a ton of work. If you don't know about the IVF kind of process, for me, I had been on birth control for a long time since I was a teenager. I've never been off birth control, and so of course I stopped birth control, and then I had maybe 2 weeks or so to basically be forced to ovulate, and so when we went through that process, I was a little disheartened. Oh my gosh, like, I'm young, and hold on, let me throw this frisbee. See if he gets it. Did he get it? Woo, did you get it? Good boy. I was a little disheartened that, you know, we were only able to freeze 3 eggs, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm really young. How can I only get 3 eggs out of this whole deal? But my husband really, he's been great through this whole thing. He really brought to light this idea that, okay, Michaela, you were on birth control for a really long time. All of a sudden, you're off of birth control, and you're basically trying to freeze eggs. So the fact that you got 3 is a pretty big deal. We were not trying to have kids. We were not trying to, you know, this hadn't been months long of, you know, being off of birth control. This was literally like a matter of weeks. So that made me feel a little bit better, even though I wasn't sure if I wanted to have children. You know, it's kind of that mentality of like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a loser. I can only get 3 eggs. No. So that was my experience with the egg process. So, the process of going in and retrieving eggs, so you have to give yourself shots. If you can't do it, you might ask, there's a lot of pollen outside and it keeps falling on me. You might ask your spouse, or you might ask your sister or your friend. There's usually somebody that's probably going to be willing to stick you with a needle. My spouse is not. He hates needles, so I had to do it all on my own, but that's okay. It didn't really bother me too much. The first time was really scary. I'll be totally honest. The first time, I wasn't sure if I could do it. I just had to literally count down 3, 2, 1, and do it. And then after that, it was, you know, like riding a bike. So, yep, so we went to the fertility doctor the first time to talk about what the process would be like. We went to the fertility doctor the second time to do blood work and to get the first round of medications. We went to the fertility doctor like 2 more times, I believe, to kind of see like how my eggs were doing, if they could see any in there. And then I believe it was the 5th time we went, I was given what is called like an activation shot, where they, it's a bigger needle, but it is, it's basically to force your body to start releasing your eggs. Once the eggs were released, the shot basically tells your body, okay, you are now going to release eggs at this time, and then my appointment was set for a specific time for me to go in, be put under, for my husband to give his sperm sample, and then I believe they probably do the addition of the egg to the sperm to create the embryos that day, probably. But yeah, so it was a procedure. They put me under. Some women choose not to be put under. I was totally fine with being put under. So I, you know, they give you a gown, and you just go, and it's it feels like a quick process, but I think you're probably in there for like 20-30 minutes. But it's scary to not know, but I think that the biggest thing for me was that I didn't feel hardly any pain. I didn't really feel like I was a burden on anybody. Like I just really went in there and I felt supported, and I felt like the doctor and the anesthesiologist and the nurses, like they were really sweet and really kind. I have no idea what I said under anesthesia, probably crazy stuff, but I remember kind of coming to and asking the nurse about where the closest restaurant was, because apparently I was hungry. So I don't know if maybe that's what I was talking about the whole time or what. So after egg retrieval is done, there were plenty more appointments. So I had to get a port put in, which you can kind of see the scar here. I still have the port in, it's right here. And when I do that, you can kind of see how that raises a little bit right there. So the port is this little plastic piece that it's about maybe 1 inch by 1 inch, and it has a little rubber hole kind of a thing, and it's where you will get chemo from. You don't have to get a port. I chose to get a port because I felt that instead of getting stuck with the needle every time I went, I would rather have you know, I mean, I am still stuck with a needle, but it's not in my veins. It's just somewhere where you know, hopefully won't, you know, blow a vein or something like that. Not that I've ever had that issue, but it just felt like the right thing to do for me. But it's everybody's choice of what they want to do. The port surgery did not hurt at all. It was a surgery that I was awake for totally and completely. It didn't hurt at the time. It hurt a little bit the next day, but it really felt more like maybe like a bruise more than actually like an invasive surgery, because it was.